Hello guys and welcome to my channel. My name is David and this channel is gonna be all about bodybuilding and bringing you the best knowledge when it comes to building muscle. I'm not gonna lie, I am from Poland, so it's extremely hard to reach out to the people outside of my country. So if you are from the United States or any country outside the Poland, please subscribe to my channel. Please share this to your friends and basically help me share this information with everyone who is interested in it. Also, if you are from Europe and you like to support my channel and myself, please use the code Olszewski at www.propeptidy.pl and order the best quality peptides. They are shipping it throughout Europe, so don't worry about it. And without further ado, let's get started. So hello guys and welcome once again. Today I have, I've always said that, but you are a special guest, especially for me, Adrew Berry, as you probably can see on the left corner on the screen. How are you, Andrew?
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for having me. I'm good. It's morning over here in Florida. I got up, did my walk. I like to walk for like 30 minutes and then I get right to my emails and start getting back to like my early people that are currently in prep. And then I kind of start my day, and we just scheduled to have you on or have me on your show, and it just worked out really well. So yeah, I'm doing good.
First question just came through to my mind. This 40 minutes in the morning is some sort of a cardio for you, or this is just like you're trying to reach some level of some number of steps for the day?
Yeah, typically I try to reach 10,000 steps, and I try to get about 3,500 to 4,000 in before my first meal. And honestly, yeah, it's cardiovascular, it's burning energy, it's increasing NEAT, but really for me, it's more for me to get my mind ready for the day because, if you're working with people, like once you get going, it's just go, 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 go. And then I'm lucky enough some days to be able to fit training sessions in for myself. But for me, at least, it's like I need to have 20, 30 minutes walking. I listen to books on tape. It's really therapeutic for me. And I just like to walk outside in the sun and just kind of get my day started.
Yeah, great. I am asking just because nowadays the trend is stop doing cardio and just do the steps. And for most of the guys, I don't see the point, to be honest. If you are not weighed like 300 pounds, you're probably not going to reach your heart rate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it's
no, like I don't
cardio.
If I'm doing cardiovascular, I don't count my steps towards. It's really more to just burn NEAT, to just get my, because when you have a job where you're sitting in front of a desk, in front of a computer 8-10 hours a day. I mean, I can tell you back in the day when I was personal training, I didn't wear a watch or anything, but I bet I got 20,000 steps in a day easy. And when it came time to prep and do cardio, I only had to do like 3 HIIT sessions a week or 5 30-minute cardio sessions. Whereas when I switched over to full-time coaching, double cardio sessions, 2 hours a day, sometimes 2.5 hours a day on very low food. So yeah, it does play a big role in terms of your NEAT, in terms of just trying to prophylactically kind of increase the amount of basal energy that you would have been burning if you had a more active lifestyle or a job.
Yeah, this is like basically my case right now, to be honest. If I am not doing the steps just go and just brief walks or something like that, it's more likely going to be like a 2 to maximum 4,000 steps a day, and it's nothing. It's actually nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, man, today I wanted to talk with you about building the perfect competitor. This is how I call it, but basically it's gonna be what to do with someone who just wanted to be like a bodybuilder and have ambitions to compete and maybe to reach some sort of level. We are not probably going to talk about like a top level athletes, just because this is a totally different topic probably, but for majority of the people. And today we're going to assume that this is like a guy who's weighed around 100 to 120 kilos, so it's going to be like I don't know, 220
40 to 50.
Oh yeah, 250 maybe, something like that. So it's like an average good to 12 like a short to 12 guy or or average open bodybuilder, something like that.
Sure.
And we're gonna assuming that this guy, for some reason, do not have any training plan, any diet, any
Mm.
PED like a protocol, and any supplements protocol. He is like, I don't know why he's so big, but he is.
Mm.
And he just wanted to work with you. So what would be the first steps that you took with your clients that is brand new?
Yeah, the first thing I always do is, and I'm sure, most coaches, I have a questionnaire. I want to learn about as much about your lifestyle, about your job, how physical you are throughout the day, what kind of training you've had the best results with, what your current diet is like, what supplements you're on, what drugs, what your blood work looks like. So I like to do a thorough analysis with all that information and build an idea of who this person is on paper so that we have some starting points. And I'll give you an example. Like if someone comes to you and you had their labs and their HDL is like in the tens or 12 or 6, I'm not going to start them off on PEDs. I'm not that guy that's willing to gamble with people's health in that sense. I mean, we all understand that there's inherent risks with what we do, but there's madness and then there's common sense. And I think when someone presents themselves with some major health issues in terms of lab work, that needs to be addressed first. So that's my first, especially when it comes to men, because obviously men are going to be using higher doses of PEDs. They're going to affect their health a little bit worse than females do usually. My first move is definitely to work on that. Depending on what the issue is, it could be a 4-week fix. It could be, hey man, we're not going to be using PEDs on a high level for a good 3-4 months. So, and here's the thing, it's hard to talk someone into, because everyone wants to hear, gas me up, get me on stage, get me jacked. And it takes a very special person to say, hey, this guy's actually looking out for my health. He wants to keep me healthy and as a client long term. And that's really my approach. Like I enjoy having longer term clients. I enjoy making sure that when they leave this sport, they're going to be just as healthy as when they first got into it. That's my thing.
How many clients you lose just because you are wanted to good for them?
So honestly, it's I would have thought a lot, and it's not that much. I've lost probably 3 good guys over the last like 4 or 5 years that didn't think I was pushing them enough with the PEDs or all the other stuff that goes into it. So I feel pretty good about that because I think I have a good relationship with the majority of my clients, that we have these conversations where we talk about like why, and what do you want to see in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Do you want to be a guy that's on kidney dialysis? Do you want to be a guy that, is on several different medications, or do you want to go on about your life and continue to bodybuild in a healthy way and have a quality of life that, that is better than most people, not worse. So yeah, I think I take that into account.
Yeah, I think this is something that more people should really think of. But because I know everyone wants to be the biggest and the greatest, and probably in there, especially when you are young, you are not thinking rationally. You're just wanted to sacrifice everything. But then you're reaching like a 30 years old, maybe 40, and you started to think, is that really worth it?
Mm. Well,
Yeah,
I'll
but
even give you
probably it's too
an
late.
example. Well, I'll even give you an example because it's kind of like a bug that we all get bit by. And, when you're younger, you can bounce back and get away with that stuff. But I'll give you, like, even myself, I'll be 40 very soon. And in my mind, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, if I just put this together and I start hitting these drugs and I really start eating again, I can make this major comeback and I'm going to be my best ever. And then I come back to reality and say, wait a minute, dude, like, you got a family, you've got a business, you got several businesses that you're starting. Like there's more to life than bodybuilding. And honestly, I just think we need to rationalize with where bodybuilding is in our lives in terms of how much happiness it gives us, how much we need to put into it. And just think about the next step. Think about life after bodybuilding with one foot still in bodybuilding.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Okay, that was a question that's not even on the on my list, so we better start if we are
Yeah.
not wanted to sit here for like a 3 hours or so. So, when it comes to the training setup during the off season with a guy who is actually wanted to grow and needs to grow, do
Mm-hmm.
you more tends to set it up like low volume, higher intensity fashion, or like a more volume, less intensity, or maybe you do something like a mix, for example, like a 4 weeks in the lower ranges, and then like a 4 weeks in the higher ranges, or something like that. And do you work with reps in reserve, because this is like a new, brand new top methods that's
Yeah, let me talk
doing
about the
quite
reps in
great.
reserve. Yeah, let me talk about the reps in reserve because that was a term that I was like, I always saw this RIR, and I'm like, what are people to write? Like you train hard, you train to failure, right? And then I'm starting to learn a little bit about this reps in reserve, and I'm not 100% convinced yet. I'll be honest, okay? Because to me, what helped me get the most progress was training brutally hard and beating the piss out of myself day in and day out. Having training partners push me pushing training partners, and just getting the most out of each other. But I am also saying I'm very willing to learn if there is a better or more efficient rate. So I'm actually I'm gonna read Mike Israetel's book, Hypertrophy. You've probably heard his name. He's one of the big proponents of that.
I've
So
read the
I
book.
plan on what's that?
I've read the book. It's
Is it good?
resistance something. I don't remember the full name, just because there
Like
was
resistance training and hypertrophy or something like that?
something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to read his book, and I might even reach out to him and try to do some consultation because I want to understand where his point of view comes from. But to answer your question, and keep in mind, I've worked with Dante Trudell earlier on in my career doing straight up regular DC training, not all these iterations that you see people doing today. The very basic 3 training days a week, 1 set per body part, give it everything you got. And I absolutely loved it. Okay. And then I also, as you probably know, I worked with John Meadows for a number of years, and I did his type of training. Where my mind lies, where what I think is mostly advantageous is I think blending both. And I'll give you an example. And I'm not necessarily talking about like 6 weeks of one style and 6 weeks the other. I'm talking within the same workout. Okay. And I'm even talking, and this is where intuition comes in, knowing what types of sets for your individual makeup, for your individual body parts is best. So, for example, I do better with volume for legs, and I do better with low volume and super high intensity for chest. Okay. So, but in a workout, let's say I'm doing a chest workout, I'm definitely going to blend some type of high intensity with some volume training. And I like to start out my chest workouts with, and for my clients, with a press. Now we might do, a heavy and a back off set, both to failure. We might do a rest pause set. We might do like one top set and then one back off set that opens up into a drop set. Okay. But the point is that we are using a high intensity technique, usually for the first 2 exercises. Let's say like an incline Smith press, and then, a flat based machine press, a top set and a back off set, maybe something special added into. Okay. And then as the workout progresses, because we've really covered the mechanical tension part of the workout, now I want to try to get into the metabolic side of the workout. So I'm going to start adding in multiple sets. I'm going to move a little bit faster. So if I add in some type of fly, I'll probably be doing like 4 sets of 12 to 15. I'll keep my rest portions a little bit shorter. And then maybe I'll finish up with one more chest press. Again, really getting a deep stretch, really getting a hard contraction, trying to get as much blood in the tissue as possible. So that's kind of I guess you could call it hybrid training. I never tried to put a marketing thing to it. I just write up what I think's worked for me and what I've seen work with other people. And keep in mind, I'm not dogmatic. I'm not like my way or the highway. Like I will listen to my clients if they're very experienced and talk to them and listen to them about what has worked for them. And we will continue to do that. So it's not like I have this, you have to follow this exact workout. It's more of a conversation where we blend things to both of our points of view.
Yeah, I think that the thing that what you say, that if they are really experienced, is the key. Just because I believe in reps reserve, but I believe also that almost no one could really train with reps in reserve properly, just because people tend to send me the videos with their top sets of to failure, and I see like a 4 to 5 reps there. So if they will train with like a 2 or 3 reps in reserve, that will be like probably 10 to 15 reps in reserve. So
Yeah.
this is like a very hard to actually prescribe to someone, especially if you're not with the guy at the gym, just because the WhatsApp's videos and stuff like that are not actually like a real life. It's just
I don't know how you do it. I do either WhatsApp or I do like a Google Drive, right? And then I use a software called Loom. You probably heard of that, where you can talk to the camera, kind of like we are right now. And I also see the screen, and they can see the screen too. So we can watch their video. And like, let's say they're doing a hack squat, and we can watch, and I can be like, look, you see I can freeze it and be like, see, you didn't reach depth there. You got about 2 more inches until you're in the hole. And then I can point to their feet, and I'll say, hey, we're really trying to work the quads. Like, I feel like your feet are much too high to target your quads. You're getting a lot of hip involvement. You're getting some glutes and hand. I want you to drop your feet another 3 inches. Yes, you're going to have to lower the weight. No one wants to hear that. You're going to have to lower the weight. But, and then the cadence, right? Like looking at the rep speed, like, hey, you're just dropping in the hole and then barreling back up. Like, I want you to go 1, 2, 3, drive. 1, 2, 3, drive. Trying to teach people proper cadence, foot placement, proper depth, all the different cues that we don't even think about anymore, just because we've been doing it so long. But putting those cues into practice, into terms that somebody can use when they're going through their own. Like for me, like whenever I do a set, like a squat or hack squat, I constantly tell myself tight. In my head, I'm just saying tight, keeping my abs tight, keeping my back pressed tight up against the back pad, keeping my hips and knees tight, just so that things don't start running the wrong way and I don't just get spastic and just try to move the weight, quote unquote. I think that's really important to give those proper cues when breaking down exercises.
Yeah, of course. And you have to remember that sometimes the technique is lost in a battle. So after 4 or 6 weeks of in off season, when you gain some strength, you actually realize that you're half repping the hack squats or something like that just to put some more weight. And this is not actually progressive overload. So
No.
this is why my guys have to send me the videos couple times, even if I assume that they are training okay and the intensity is there. I really wanted to them see what they are doing actually, just to be like a sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Let me ask you, how old are you?
I'm 29 this year.
Okay, so you're still pretty young, but so I'm thinking back for myself, like back when I was like 29, or even when I was in my 20s and really deep into bodybuilding and growing. And we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't bring cell phones to the gym. And I keep telling people, like, I always joke around with some of my training partners, because one of them's a 23-year-old kid. I'm like, man, like, if you could see some of this stuff. And then I stopped myself, because I'm like, I just sound like an old man. He probably thinks I'm making stuff up to him, like making all these stories up about all the weights I used to use. But the problem is we just don't have it on footage. We never thought to bring video cameras into the gym. I mean, my early training partners, when I was young, when I was 20, I trained with a guy who was a Mr. Vermont and another guy who was also a Mr. Vermont. And they were both 30 to 35 in the prime. If someone brought a camera in there and it was in their way, they would have just knocked that shit right out of the way, and they would have kept on walking. Like, they wouldn't have cared. That's just the kind of guys they were. The gym is a sacred place. You don't pull phones out. And these guys didn't even wear headphones. Like, these guys were like, they wanted silence, and they wanted to talk to you about, coach you through your sets. So that's how I grew up, and honestly, I loved it.
Yeah, this is like a blood and guts when the Dorian is actually pissed just because they are recording them. Let's talk about off-season diet, just because some people think that especially for the beginners, the bulking or the dirty bulk is the better option, just to put some weight. But with your guys, you tend to hold on more to the shape during the off season. So let's just put it in some better words. Do you use some sort of guidance for the actually staying lean during the off season for your guys, or you think that you have to push the calories and no matter how you look, this is just what you have to do?
Well, let me first say that I think that every guy, when they're growing, has like one dirty bulk in their career, like one of those, just to understand what it feels like and to go through that process. So, like if I have a 20-year-old guy and he's about 250 pounds or 180 kilos, like you mentioned, like, yeah, we might do one really hard bulk where we get him up to 300 and we don't necessarily care exactly how it looks. Because I do think there is some advantages to doing like that one dirty bulk. Now, you've been bodybuilding for 7-8 years, you're in your 30s now. I don't think that makes sense at all, right? I mean, even from a health standpoint, or more so from a health standpoint. But to get back to your question, client, he's been competing for a couple of years. He's a big bodybuilder. The number one rule for me is insulin sensitivity. We need to stay insulin sensitive. And that's why I have almost to a T, all my clients are always checking in with their fasted blood glucose. And I might even have them do a whole day's worth of their glucose, 2.5, 2 to 3 hours after a meal, because I want to see what that response is throughout the day as well. So I think keeping insulin sensitivity high is the number one thing. You can still push food, and you can still grow, I'm thinking back, you probably know of my client, Nate Spear. He's an IFBB pro. He just did the New York. We had his food. Let's say I'm guessing or I'm estimating. I think his carbs were somewhere around 950 on training days, right? But he didn't lose his insulin sensitivity because we just very slowly, methodically brought it up, kept health supplements in. And he naturally has a pretty solid insulin sensitivity to begin with, whereas I might have some people where I'll give you another example. I got a guy, I keep him, I think his total carbs are somewhere around 50, 60 grams a day. He's deep into his off season because he loses insulin sensitivity so quickly. Like we're talking 2 weeks after the show, he's only eating 200 grams of carbs and his blood sugar, he's waking up at 107 every day. And I've come at it from many different angles. I've tried to explore other, some autoimmune diseases and stuff. He just has horrible insulin sensitivity and he loses it the minute he starts eating in a surplus. So we push a much higher fat day, or much, much higher fats with him. And we keep the carbs positioned around his peri-workout window. I guess my point is, though, is that everything is so individual and everything is it's got to be tailored to that client. And we do everything we can to keep insulin sensitivity up.
I never thought the way, but when you mention it, do you think that the whole idea of being a mesomorph, ectomorph, and stuff like that is more like from your genetic predisposition to have good or bad insulin sensitivity? Because they say that the metabolic level between the people are not actually that different. Maybe it's like a 5% between the people, so it's not that much. Assuming that the need is the same between both of these people, so maybe the insulin sensitivity part is the magic, the golden rule for staying in shape, even for those who are theoretically more tends to gaining weight.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that plays a role. I mean, we also got to remember there's so much that we don't know yet scientifically that contributes to metabolism, genotype, and phenotypic expression. But yeah, I mean, well, put it this way: you got someone like Carlos Thomas Jr.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so like he's your classic, mesomorph, just muscle falling off the bone, right? And he keeps pretty solid insulin sensitivity. But then I could also find you another guy with his height and weight, right? Who doesn't look anything like him, who has horrible insulin sensitivity, and he still has a quote unquote mesomorphic frame, right? But just doesn't have the same makeup. So I just think there's so much involved with genetics, and there's so much involved with things that we can't necessarily control. Like, yes, we can get someone fat-free. We can get someone bigger with more muscle. We can get someone dry with water and sodium and all that manipulation, but you can't change the way the muscle looks on the bone, right?
Yeah.
So I just think there's like so many different factors. And one of those factors is that genetic prevalence towards leanness, that some people just have. Like, I'm trying to think of, I've got another kid. He's a classic kid. It was hard to get him from 200 to 220. Poor guy was eating 1,200 carbs a day. And I know he was eating it because I train a couple of his clients, and I'd ask him about him. Is he eating all his food? And they're like, man, he's either eating his food or he's sitting around complaining about how much food you have him eating, like it's one of those things.
Yeah.
And this kid could not get fat to save his life. I'm telling you, like, it wasn't like he was eating low protein or low fats too. He was, 400 protein, I think 120, 125 fats. So some people, if I were to eat that right now, I'd be a blimp, and I wouldn't even look like I ever lifted a weight.
8,000 calories or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 74, I think, on most days, 74. And then on top of that, he had free meals, which I don't even think he took, because, when you get deep in the off season, you're like, the last thing I want to do is have a higher calorie meal. Like, if anything, I will take a free meal that will have less calories so that my stomach feels like settled for a little while, But yeah.
Okay, man. So, this is like this question it's needed for the next 3 questions actually, but how are you actually counting your macros? Because some guys counting like protein only for the animal sources, and some counting from the every sources, so from the wheats, from the rice and stuff like that. You mentioned 400 grams of protein with this guy. This is like a only animal source or everything in diet?
This would only be animal source. It would only be whey. It would only be eggs. It would only be none of the protein that's in oatmeal, the 3 grams in a cup or half cup, the 2 to 4 grams that are in a half cup to a cup of rice, none of that. So I don't count those proteins. Okay. Oddly though, I do count the fats that are in, like, say, oatmeal. Like, if I have a guy eating a cup of oatmeal, which adds about 6 grams of fat, I will put that in the macro counter. I have a spreadsheet formula that I use where I put the foods in myself and the macros. So I just omit the protein, I add the carbs, and I add the fats. And I do that because, well, it's just my system. You know what I mean? I don't think the trace proteins of, let's say you're getting 25 grams of trace protein a day, right? That's 100 extra calories, no big deal. But if you're getting 25 extra trace grams of fat, right, that's 2.5 times the cal. So it's something that you need to account for, I think. So, and that's why I do that.
Yeah, but assuming that you're counting it like an average, basically oatmeal is the same calories for 100 grams as rice. So it's probably you ended the day with just less carbs and just minimum more fats, but the calories probably will be
about the same.
About the same. Yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
So if we have this set, so how many grams for kilogram of the guy, or pounds, if you like that, is your like a preferable way in the off season?
Yeah. So again, like, I don't necessarily have like an exact number, and here's why. What I do is I look at someone, what they're currently doing, and then I make changes that make sense to me. So for instance, let's say I got this guy, the 250-pound guy, and he was only eating 200 grams of protein, right? Well, right off the bat, I would say the first move we're going to make is we're going to bump your protein up at least 75 grams for the first 3-4 weeks. And then I'm probably going to bump it up another 50 grams in the next month. And then ideally, I want to probably get, if he's a 250-pound guy, I want to get his protein up to about 400 grams, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah. I will say this though, because we put so much emphasis on protein. And I heard Justin Harris say this almost 20 years ago, and it made so much sense to me, that we're eating 300, 400 grams of protein a day. You do the math on that. It works out to something like 80 pounds of muscle a year that you should have put on. No one's putting on 80 pounds of muscle. You're happy if you put on 4 to 5 pounds of muscle if you're experienced at this point. So where does that protein go? Obviously, we're using protein for other stuff like amino acids, hormone messengers, structural integrity of cells, but also energy. So I never want to feed someone so much protein that they're going through gluconeogenesis so much that they stop, or their body has a harder time utilizing carbohydrates as an energy source because they're so used to turning so much protein into carbohydrates or a usable energy source. So I think there's a happy medium there.
Yeah, I get it, but you say happy medium, and if I make for example, a couple days ago I made a quick TikTok video about how many grams of protein you should take for a kilo of the body weight in average. And I even assume that someone is probably gonna count it from the average sources. And I say like a 3 to 3.5 gram. So it's probably gonna like a 1.5 of pounds, like a
Yes.
gram for pounds.
Yeah, I would agree with
And
that.
immediately people just attack me. It's too much. 1.6 grams per kilo is max, or 2 grams is max, and stuff like that. And people still believe that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I talk with many coaches, and I have a few. Right now, I have a third one, so maybe not a few, but
Yeah.
yeah. And every time, this is like a only animal source and none less than 3.5 gram per kilo. So none
Okay.
less than 1.5 gram per pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And where is the logic with all those people who are like a 60 kilos or like a 100 pounds, and they are
No.
still gonna fight with you
Yeah.
just because they read it on the PubMed. So this is a truth.
So okay, so you mentioned the PubMed, right? And I remember sitting in my nutrition classes because I went and got degrees in nutrition, food science, and dietetics, and I'd be listening to these. Back then, I think they were trying to tell us it was like zero point 0.7 grams per kilogram of a body weight, and I'm sitting there and I'm doing the math. I'm like, that's like half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. Not even, right? Like there's no way I'm going to drop down to eating 110 grams or 120 grams of protein a day. That's ridiculous, right? And I think what they're coming from and where science is coming from is what is the bare minimum that
Yeah.
someone needs to sustain the muscle protein they have. They're not assuming it's not even an idea in their mind that someone would want to grow muscle to the extent that we would. So they don't experiment with that kind of stuff, and they don't and they just don't know. So then these super wizards that go on the PubMed, and I think PubMed is good for a lot of things, but they go on the Google Scholar, they go on PubMed, and they cite these research studies, and it's like, guy, we have thousands of bodybuilders that are good to the contrary. And this is my point with bodybuilding, is that if you're doing something and it goes against the grain and other people don't think it makes sense, but it keeps working, why would you stop it? Okay. And I think that's what bodybuilding has done in terms of protein accrual and protein intake. We've realized, hey, more was good. Okay, let's do that. More was better. Let's do that. I'm sure there's some guys that got to a point where they were eating so much and they're like, between digestion and between the way their physique looked, they said, okay, that's too much. Like maybe someone like Nasser, right? Maybe he was eating 800 grams of protein a day and realized, okay, maybe my body can't process 800 grams, but 550 grams or 500 grams of protein a day, I can absolutely do that. And I'm going to become a 300-pound monster. And thus he did, you know?
Yeah. I even think that the bodybuilders are probably a couple years ahead of science.
100%.
Yeah, they are by any means not know why and how it works, but it works. And
Well, I
but
would even go as far as to say that we do know why it works. It's just a scientific study hasn't proven it yet. Like, let's talk about insulin, right? Like the
common
ways to use
sense.
insulin properly, or ways to use compounds like semaglutide, or even like diuretics or stacking PEDs. Like science never thought to do that kind of stuff. They never thought to, okay, if we add this compound and we add a DHT compound, what is the net effect of that? You know? Oh, it was I believe it was it was Dan Duchaine that experimented with insulin before any other bodybuilder, any scientist ever did on a person who was not diabetic. And I don't know if you ever read his underground handbook that had a lot of his theories and thoughts, and some of them are wrong, but a lot of them are right. And he kind of was a pioneer for the drug experimentation that we do today. So if anyone out there hasn't seen his book or seen some of his work, I highly reach out.
The black book of steroids. No,
I think it's called the under. It's been a while.
I
Dan
read a few,
Duchaine,
but I'm not sure of that one.
the Underground Handbook by Dan Duchaine. Underground Anabolic Handbook, I think is what it's called. Yeah, where he talks about insulin, and he talks about tren, and talks about all these different compounds that people didn't start using really until 20, 30, 40 years later. So he was ahead of his time. And I also think about other practices, not just in terms of PEDs, but things that we do. Like, I'll give you an example. When I was in college, my nutrition 101 class, they taught us all this stuff, right? And it was all BS. And then they're like, at the end, the last experiment or the last project was write a diet that's going to help somebody lose 20 pounds. Well, here's the thing. I just did a bodybuilding show and I lost 33 pounds and I literally competed like 2 days before the assignment was due. So I wrote up my exact diet and everything I did, right, to a T, all the changes I made, etc. I turn it in, and this is way more detailed than anyone else's. And she gave me an F on it because I didn't follow the guidelines. And I'm like, yeah, but like, here's a Polaroid. This is back in the day when we had Polaroids. I go, this was me before, this was me after. Okay, I lost 32 pounds on the diet. There's no way you can tell me this didn't work because I just did it. And she still gave me an F because I didn't follow the guidelines of the food guide pyramid and the RDA for this and all these things that don't work, right? Because the general public is fat. Like anything they're telling people to do, it's obviously not working. The majority of, at least Americans, I don't know how about your country, but everyone in our country is fat, dude. Like I think it's 68% are like obese or overweight, and like 50% are considered more obese, and 30% are more morbidly obese. Like that's disgusting.
Yeah, here is getting worse and worse year after year. So we're probably gonna hit these numbers very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about your fats, or how do you like to set your fats in the off season, and how important the fats are in your opinion during the mass building period?
So I don't think fats are as important with the guys that are using PEDs. If they're a natural competitor, they're absolutely important. But in terms of the PED side of things, like we don't necessarily need a lot of cholesterol and fat because you're giving yourself exogenous sources of these hormones, right? So you do need some, obviously, for cellular integrity and for nerves and all that kind of stuff. But when I write diets, I try to give someone a mixture of foods. I'm not the kind of guy that's just like chicken and rice 5 meals a day. I want to give you a little bit of variety. So I want to have a beef meal in there. If I can, I want to try to work salmon in twice a week. I want to give you a little bit of variety to increase your exposure to other nutrients, right? Because your body's not going to grow efficiently if you're not getting as many nutrients as you possibly can. So in terms of fats, I don't necessarily write a lot of fats in. I write the bulk of the diet first, and I've included like eggs, whole eggs, beef 1 or 2 meals a day. And then I'll add in some oils like macadamia nut. Like let's say I have a chicken and rice meal written for somebody, or a fish and rice meal. Well, there's no fats in there. I'm probably going to add in 10 grams of olive oil or 10 grams of macadamia nut oil. And then at a later meal, let's say there's turkey and rice, I'm probably going to add in half of an avocado. So I do try to, I write the diet out first, and then I say, hey, we're kind of low on fats. I'm going to add some fats in here so that most meals have about 10 to 12 grams of fats. Now, when we're really pushing calories, right, and this is where talking to your clients comes from, you got to figure out, do the carbs or the fats fill them up faster? Because in the off season, the goal is to try to keep them as hungry as possible for as long as possible. And if someone's like, man, I just can't think of eating any more rice. Okay, I'm probably going to up that half avocado to a full avocado in that meal and double the calories from the fat source. And so that's a situation where I like to increase fats. Yeah.
Okay, I probably should just write off this question, because most of the time the answer is the rest. But what about the carbs?
Yeah, I mean, well, so no, actually, that is a good question, right? Because it depends on what state of the off season we're in, right? If we're using insulin, if we're using stuff like that. So, I first and foremost, I want to try to put your carbs in the peri-workout window. Okay, so pre, intra, and post. I really like using insulin intra workout, but I'm not against using insulin, say, in a pre-workout or post-workout situation. And I'm not against using insulin in a first meal of the day situation and really front loading the carbs either. So I've got a million protocols. I tell everyone, like, I don't have a protocol. I don't have a system. Like, I look at you, the client, I look at your schedule, when you're training, what just makes sense to me on where to feed you and where to keep you a little bit lighter in the calories.
Yeah, of course. I know that you on a one podcast, I don't remember which one it was, but you say that you like it your insulin with GH like a 15 minutes before the workout and just start to sipping with your intra
Yeah,
workout. This is like your I thought always that this is your preferable way.
I would say it's like 90%. Absolutely. And I will say I'm very I lean towards that way because it's the system, it's the protocol that I got the most out of myself and that I've seen with a lot of other people. But if you want, I'll go over it real quickly. Yeah, let's say, you know, you had your pre-workout meal 90 minutes before going to the gym. You go to the gym, you bring your insulin, you go in the locker room, you take your insulin, Humalog, Novolog, Apidra, Fiasp, something like that. And then you start drinking your intra shake. And I want you to be drinking it a little bit faster so that, you know, if you're old like me, you got to go in, you got to do like 6 different shoulder things just to be able to have an upper body workout. And you got to do, you know, your legs and back. And so I do all these different mobility exercises, which take about 10 or 12 minutes. So during that time, I'm sipping my drink a little bit faster. While I'm warming up for my first exercise, I'm sipping that drink a little bit faster. And I want about 20% of the whole drink done before you hit your first working set of the day. And then after that, it's just keep sipping on it. And we get that 20% in, you know, fairly quickly because we just want to make sure that the insulin's not going to hurt your workout.
Yeah.
We want to make sure you're kind of getting ahead of the insulin in terms of not going hypo and hurting your workout in any way. If you're doing it the right way, you shouldn't even notice that you took insulin from a feeling standpoint, but you should look and feel like your pump is better and you're exploding. Like, there should be a visual, but you hopefully should not be feeling like any signs of hypoglycemia.
Yeah, of course. Okay, next question is yeah, this is like an important question, very very important in my opinion. Do you use some sort of like a carb cycling in the off season? It's probably going to be something like a workout and non-workout days. And how do you like to set it up? Like low fat on like a workout days and higher fats in the non-workout or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely do like a higher carb day on your training days and a lower carb, higher fat day on your non-training days. I will say though, let's say you get to a situation where someone's eating, you know, more than 1,000 carbs a day. I will probably actually switch that and have their higher carb day be on their non-training day and then their lower carb day be on their training day. Reasoning being that I want them to be able to have effective training sessions. And if you're walking into the gym, your stomach's full, you're feeling bloated, you're not going to have a good workout.
Yeah.
So we actually make that shift once we get to like a certain number, and it's all based off feedback. When the client's like, man, like, I just don't have enough time in the day to get all this food in and get a proper training session. I can't space it out anymore. So then we'll definitely feed up more on those non-training days. But the typical person in the off season, 95% of people, you're going to have a higher carb day on your training day. And I might even cycle carbs a little bit more. Like, let's say I'm trying to bring a guy's legs up. Let's say he started out in men's physique and he didn't really train his legs and he's now going classic or open bodybuilding. So yeah, we'll definitely be feeding him harder on those days. We'll probably be utilizing insulin several times during the day, and we'll probably be increasing his PEDs to add in some Anadrol and halotestin before his workout to try to drive that aggression and strength on those leg lifts, so that, you know, we can try to bridge the gap in terms of expediting his progress on his legs to catch up to the upper.
Yeah, smile a little when you say you have your men's physique guy, just because you probably have to change the protocol right now, because the guys from the men's physique are basically from now on not allowed to train their legs because the weight cut.
Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely changing some things up. Honestly, I think it's going to be for the better because, and here's the thing: a lot of guys over the years, I've heard people talk a lot of shit about men's physique guys, and until you've been backstage with men's physique pros, like good men's physique pros,
Oh,
you
those
just
are
don't
beasts.
understand.
Yeah,
They're genetically blessed to the point that, and they have the size and they have the muscularity. They're freaks. Okay. Now, if they wanted to do classic, almost any of them to a T could do classic. If they want
same
to do
day.
open,
Same day.
same day. Yeah, same day. Yeah, same day. I mean, you see the guys now in the board shorts, like their quads are like bursting out
Yeah.
through those things. No
Barely
longer
fit
are the
in.
shorts like loose. Yeah, it's wild. So I have a lot of I just like to point that out. I have a lot of respect for top, men's physique guys because some of them train their balls off and some of them
You
they're
see,
good.
I don't really care which division you're competing. If you're busting your balls, that's enough for me. So
Yeah.
I know a girls that trains 10 times harder than open
Same.
bodybuilders. So
Hmm.
who cares?
I
Yeah,
agree with you 100%.
yeah,
I,
of
I
course.
think we go into this whole like sport of like this stigma of like, oh, the open bodybuilders must train way harder than the classic guys, and the classic guys train harder than the men's physique, and all those men must train way harder than the women because they're so much bigger. And it's not. I've got bikini girls that train their balls off. Well, they don't have balls, but they train their ovaries off. You know what I mean? And they would leave some of my guys sucking wind. But yeah, no. So, and I think we've been seeing in the men's physique the change over the years with in terms of giving Aaron Banks. He's a longer, taller, lankier, not as muscular compared to say like a Brandon Hendrickson
Yeah.
or some Ferguson or some of these other guys that are a little bit shorter, stockier. So I do think they're trying to differentiate the divisions a little bit more like they originally had planned. Because you leave any sport, you you give a criteria, and then the criteria 5 years later is way different than the criteria year one and the criteria 10. And in our sport, it's all about advancement. So everyone's going to be bigger, everyone's more muscular, everyone's
Yeah.
more lean, everyone's more dry. It's just the way it is.
Especially bikini is the one division that's you almost don't know how to judge it. And
The
you,
hardest to judge.
yeah, you go to the Europe and the girl probably gonna win all the shows, and then she go to the States and she's lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
it's
like it's crazy.
Listen, we did 5 shows for the wife last year, and 2 shows she made first call out, was in that top 5. Everything looks great. We go to a third show, and she's in the third call out, like not even placing, and we're like, "Are you kidding? Like what? Like we were on this upward rise, and then it's like boom, and it's all based on the judges." But yeah, you're right. Bikini's the hardest class to judge out of all the sports. Bodybuilding's easy, right? The most jacked, in shape, muscular guy is going to win. Like as long as
Yeah.
he's not missing body parts. Classic, it's a little bit more okay. What is your preference? But it's pretty easy to tell. Women's divisions figure, okay, the one with the greatest, taper and
Yeah.
muscularity and condition, she's going to win. But bikini, man, bikini is just like, I mean, they all look friggin' amazing. It is hard to judge.
Yeah. Uh, just I wanted to ask you, do you like the idea of the mini cut trend right now? Do you like your guys to doing like a straight, I don't know, 16, 20, 30 weeks of just off season, or do you like I don't know, like a trying to fit in some like a periods, like a 6 week push, then
Yeah.
2 weeks mini
So
cuts and stuff like that?
yeah, so it goes back to my original point of whatever it takes to keep insulin sensitivity. So if we see glucose, blood sugar coming up in the morning, we're definitely going to go into some kind of mini cut. And this is something we've been doing. I mean, I remember doing these 15 years ago, even in my own bodybuilding, being like, okay, I'm getting fat. I test my blood sugar and it's 107. It's like, okay, I need to clean this up for a good 4 weeks. And so, yeah, I'd add cardio in and I would cut my carbs. And back then I used to do it way too drastically. I would pull like all carbs out with the exception of like my pre and post workout meals, and I'd get insulin sensitive very quickly again. So, but a lot of times what I'll do with guys and people in general is I'll do 2 weeks in a pretty solid surplus and then 1 week pulling back. And that's kind of how we take our whole off season. We'll do 2 weeks up, 1 week down, 2 weeks up, 1 week down. And I feel like that's a really good way to keep your insulin sensitivity high. And it's like taking one step backwards to take 2 steps forwards.
Yeah, it's logical. Yeah. And what do you think about the cheat meals? I have to ask just because everyone just everyone will probably kill me if I am not asked about the cheat meals, just because for some guys it's probably needed like mentally, but do you use cheat meals in the off season, or do you it's more like, I don't know, you have plans with I don't know, like you getting like married, so of course you have cheat.
Anyone that's getting married, just put that out there, you're allowed to have the wedding cake with your wife. No, but I mean, I put it in there as everyone gets a free meal in the off season, and it's up to them if they want to take it, because as we talked about before, if you're a guy that's already eating 800 grams of carbs a day and 400 grams of protein and 100 fats, you're probably not really wanting to eat this large meal, and you just don't want to feel like shit, right? But my rules for free meals are, whatever you do, make sure that you're able to eat your next meal. So if you wanted to go have a breakfast, fine, but you better not eat so much that you can't eat meals 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. I tend to tell people, save your free meal for the last meal at night, because you've already eaten your 5 regular meals for the day. Now you can have your free meal. And you can eat as much as you want, but again, come next morning, you better get up and have your breakfast. Okay. And that usually keeps people in check from doing these all you can eat pizza buffets and all this. They use a lot of common sense with what they're picking for their free meals. And then the other rule is, don't pick anything that's going to mess your digestion up. And for instance, like I can't eat cheese really, so I'm not going to have a piece of pizza for my free meal, and I give examples, they're the typical bodybuilder foods like sushi, because you're getting a good dose of protein with that. Steak and fries, burger and fries. I think those things are fine. And usually with a guy that's eating a lot in the off season, the calories are almost going to work out for the same. They might have a little bit higher fats and a little lower protein, but the calories are going to be roughly the same as the meal that they're replacing. So the other thing, and this is more for women, because I find that women tend to be more, they like to hoard food in a sense, or they like to hide what they're eating. I tell them, look, I want you to go out, have dinner with like your boyfriend or husband, or whatever the special event is. Make it more about the experience and not so much about getting the food in, like enjoy the time away where you don't have to cook your next meal. And for me, that's what it always was, is, oh, I don't have to cook something cool. Like that's the appeal for me, right? Someone else is cooking it for me. So I think they definitely have a place.
What is, in your opinion, what's the biggest mistake that guys are doing in their off seasons, diet wise, of course?
Okay, so I would say it probably comes down to guys that are not fixing their digestive issues. So, I run into this a lot. And one of my big things is I really try to fix functional issues, whether it's, lack of stomach acid or SIBO or something to that. So I think they just think that they're supposed to feel bloated and like crap all day. And obviously, if you're eating a shit ton, eventually you're going to feel that way. But I think they don't do their job in terms of adding digestive enzymes, chewing their food slower, cutting their foods up into tinier pieces, talking to their coach about food sources that aren't working for them. I think digestion is probably the biggest thing.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And many guys are actually thinking that this is okay. I feel that way for years, so this is how I'm supposed to feel. Yeah, but no.
No. I mean, like back in the day, we used to feel like, okay, take a big bite of food, take a drink of water or something, swallow, and just repeat it, and then repeat it again 2 hours later, and again 2 hours later. I did all that. I felt like crap. You're going to the bathroom 6 times a day. and you're not absorbing your food. That's the important thing. Is it's not necessarily how much you can eat, it's how much you can absorb, right? So we got to make sure the gut lining is protected, the mucosal lining. We got to make sure you're making food choices that work for your digestive system.
Yeah. I I don't know how to fit the question right now to not change the subject, but what do you think about the cardio in the off season? This is like a
Yeah.
tool you have to use,
Yeah.
especially for those heavy guys, or this is like it's even can hinder for some guys. Like
Absolutely. So, well, I will say this, and this is where a lot more experimentation comes in with individual people, because we might find, let's say I got a guy and he's eating 4,500 calories, and I have him add in 3 cardio sessions a week, 20 minutes, heart rate about 130 to 135, and just by doing that he's able to bump his calories up another 600 for the day. Okay, to me that's a net positive. And additionally, we're working his heart a little bit as his body continues to get larger and larger. Now, I don't want anyone doing 7 sessions of 45 minutes deep in their off season just to fit more calories in, because then when it comes time to prep, we're going to add in 2 45-minute sessions right off the bat. Like, no, so there's got to be some happy medium there in terms of, is it going to keep your heart healthier? Is it going to allow you to get a few more calories in? And C, is it just going to increase your NEAT just a little bit more so that, overall your joints feel better? You're a little bit more clear-headed. Kind of like what I was telling you today, like I do like a 30-minute walk to start off the day. It's to get the blood moving, it's to get some sunshine and to wake my body and my brain up so that I can have a good day.
Yeah. And right now we are gonna talk about the stuff that probably everyone's just waiting and just wanted us to stop talking about the silly stuff. No one wanna hear the silly stuff like a diet training. Who does that? So PEDs in the off season.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your like a choice for the off season, and why, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about orals in the off season?
Good. Okay. Good questions. I think all cycles need to start with testosterone as a base. So, where you are in terms of your testosterone use, it might be, if you're a younger guy in your 200s, 500 to 800 milligrams of testosterone. As you get bigger and you're 250 plus, you're probably going to be in the off season 1,000, 1,200, maybe as high as 1,500 milligrams of testosterone a week. And then with that, I like to stack compounds. So, a favorite off-season cycle for me would be testosterone, EQ, and NPP. Something like, let's say 900 test, 900 EQ, and 100 NPP every other day, something to that. Okay. I think there's synergy when you blend compounds with different pathways, like the 5-alpha reductases and testosterone base and other compounds. Now, you asked about orals. I don't like to run orals for too long in a day-to-day scenario, but we might say kick off a cycle with, say, 100 megs of Anadrol for 14 to maybe 15 days. And the reason why I want to keep them short is because I find that the orals really cut down on people's appetite very quickly because of the disastrous effects on the liver. So, I have a guy who just started recently. I think we just did the exact same cycle I mentioned, 900, and 100 NPP every other day. And we started him off with 100 mgs of Anadrol. And then around day 10, he messaged me and said, "Hey, dude, I felt my appetite's really going down." I said, "Okay, just pull it right out. Pull the Anadrol out, and we'll add it back in eventually." And then I did also mention previously, but I do like to stack, say, Anadrol, halotestin, and sometimes other compounds on particular body part days that we're trying to bring up. And I like to really do that to drive aggression and strength in those movements on the body parts that people need to bring up the most. So, like, for instance, like if one of my training partners is trying to bring up his legs, 100 mgs of Anadrol, 20 to 30 mgs of halotestin, about 90 to 120 minutes before the workout session. And usually they end up blowing by me in terms of the weights that we're using, and it's a good session for them. But other compounds, a lot of people there's always like scrutiny if there's trenbolone in an off-season cycle.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to use trenbolone to front load a cycle and also use it at the back end, at the very end of a cycle, to try to quote unquote clean things up a little bit. You know, you get a little sloppy, and we're going to go into a cruise phase. Maybe the last 4 weeks, I might add trenbolone in, you know, 400 or 500 mgs of tren and anthate, and pull something else out, keep in mind. And we do that to make sure, well, you get better nutrient partitioning. You're going to, you're adding another compound that doesn't aromatize. So yeah, you're just kind of, we call it, I think Jordan Peterson calls it like, or Peters calls it the tidy up phase kind of thing. It's kind of like, I just call it the cleanup phase, you know, before we go into your cruise.
What do you think about the Primo? I know that
That's
some
the
guys
other one.
like it, but do you seriously see anyone who are gaining serious mass on Primo?
Yes, but you got to use like 800
A
mgs
lot.
a week. Yeah. It's not, and it is one of the more expensive compounds. It's not one of those compounds that you're going to be able to get by with 300 milligrams and grow the same way you would with some of the other androgens. So yeah, no, I was going to say the other compound I like to run is test and primo cycles with the orals. And I like to test primo because I find the primo is a little bit better on the blood work in
Yeah,
terms
it's not
of,
harsh. Yeah.
yeah, it's not harsh like the other ones. You know, and you can get away with using next to no or very little of an AI,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
also going to have more disastrous effects on the health. So I do, yeah. And here's the thing: when I get a guy and who's, let's say he's somewhat experienced, I want his feedback on what compounds he's had good, you know, experiences with. And I mean, there's only a few compounds that I really don't like. Like, I'm not a fan of Deca. I used that back in the day. I've used it with a few people. I just don't like it. I don't like the way you look on it. Sure, the way your joints feel and the strength and the water retention.
But nonchalant, like in general, old Deca as a
No, just Deca. I do like the nandrolone phenylpropionate. I just don't like the Deca because I feel like there's aromatization happens at a much higher rate there, and it's a little harder to control. And I find that like your appetite, at least in my experience, and again, I haven't used it in 12 or 14 years, but my appetite would go to shit when I would be using Deca very, very quickly. And I found that with a few other people, so I don't really tend to use it.
okay. I'm not gonna ask about the stuffs like DHB or something like that, just because this is the bullshit for just like for the gym bros and stuff like that. I know some guys use it and but and mans and stuff like that, but this is like a tricky one. And no one really knows what it actually does for your body, so you
In
never
terms of
know. Yeah,
in terms
like
of ment and DHB and yeah, I think what you're talking about is like some of these like quote unquote exotic compounds
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah. This is like a tricky one.
listen, I'm all about the tried and true. The drugs that worked for, you know, the guys in the 90s and the early 2000s, those are the compounds that
Yeah,
I think are going to work today.
this is why I told about it, just because the guys from the gym bros
Mm-hmm.
from the I don't know, animal forum that I are never actually made a post.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they always looking for something magical, and
Yes.
then you see the pro cycles, and it's always like a test NPP or Deca, some nandrolone,
Something
or
like
even a
that.
trend,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter, 19 or, and then maybe some sprinkles like some orals or boldenone or maybe
Mm-hmm.
primo or something just to fill out the milligrams for the weekend for the
Mm-hmm.
week, yeah, and that's all.
Mm-hmm.
And these
Yeah.
guys are looking for like a magic. You have a client and you send him a protocol, and he's what?
Um,
I've used it before. I
yeah.
know, and you're probably gonna use it for the next 15 years or 20 years.
Well, here's what it
Deal with
is.
it.
Here's what it is. Nobody wants to believe that there isn't a secret that the pros or that some insiders have. Everyone wants to think that if I can just find that one compound or that group of compounds, they can't accept that there's other people that are just genetically more God gifted that are supposed to be bodybuilders over them. I mean, and you even see this in the pro levels, right? Because there's levels of genetics in the pros. There's the Phil Heath genetics, right? And the Rami genetics and the Brandon Curry genetics. And then there's all those other guys that are still really friggin' good with the size and everything, but they don't have that Sean Roden, Phil Heath, muscle tie-ins, Dexter Jackson, Ronnie Coleman. Like there's tiers to being a pro too. But the guys at the local and the amateur level, they just refuse to believe that those guys are genetically better than them, that they're just lying to you about the compounds. We get this on our podcast, the Blood, Sweat, and Gear, all the time, that we're holding back information.
Which I love, actually.
Oh, thank you very much. But you wouldn't believe the number one comment we get, like, maybe you could talk about real cycles that you guys do, or maybe you could talk about the real cycles you have your clients on. And it's like, guy, like, we're giving you, why would we hide anything? We literally tell you exactly what we do. There's no secrets. There's no insider information that you're not privy to at this point. It's just, you have your genetic structure, you eat all your food, you train your ass off, you take the same drugs as everyone else, and you ride it as far as you can. And you need to accept that maybe as far as you can go is only here, whereas these other guys that I mentioned, these top pros, like, they're up here. It's just the way it is. It's the same thing. I'm not going to join the NBA because I like basketball and expect that I'm going to be Michael Jordan or, some top basketball athlete just because I want to do it. Like, those guys have some secret. No, it's genetics. Like, they're genetically more tailored to that event or that endeavor than I am. So it's, and that's where that
the guy's just not willing to work hard. This is why I lately I binge watching like the Ross Patrick YouTube channel, and I love this guy just because he is just so honest, and he is not mentally okay, but in a good way. His word ethic are so freaky, and everything he do on 150%. Even walking, I feel like he is just mentally have to challenge himself with every single thing he do. And I would really love to invite him to the podcast and talk about it just because there's almost no one like him right now, that open, and that's like I don't know. He's just a different animal. I don't know even how to put it into words.
Well, yeah, he's an incredibly hard worker, but he also has the freedom because he has his own businesses. He doesn't work for anyone else. He can tell you exactly what he does and be completely honest about it. Whereas, back in the day, like Jay Cutler signed by Muscle Tech, he couldn't tell you that he was also running, 1,500 milligrams of testosterone in the off season. He told you he was taking Celtec, right? Well, today, athletes, especially someone like Ross, who doesn't work for a supplement company, who doesn't have that puts, tight strings on him. He can be honest with his following and tell them exactly what he does, how he approaches things. He can show his work ethic and talk about, the PEDs and the other things that go into our sport.
Yeah, I was not even talking about the PEDs and stuff like that. But more about, but even like the step amount he's doing, like amount of cardio he's doing, the calories burned that he is willing to. You watch the one scene of his vlog and he's tired as fuck. And then 15 minutes later, he is like, "Oh, I'm gonna do the 10,000 steps right now." He's like, I'm barely standing, so maybe I'm go just hiking. I don't know. It's like, let's try if I just pass out.
You remember, Chris Tuttle, right? You've heard of Chris. Okay. So I remember Chris made a video like 8 years ago when he was deep in bodybuilding, and he was like, whatever's the hardest thing you can think of, like right now, just do it. And he was like, or he's like, how there's like an easy way and a hard way to do something. He's like, don't do it the easy way. Do it the hardest way, because you're going to burn the most calories doing that. You're going to help your physique out the most by doing that. Don't just be lazy. Get off the couch right now and do it. And that definitely resonated with me. He has good lessons like that.
Yeah. And Chris is doing it to this day. His boxing is It's
Listen,
out of this world.
I sent him a message like a month ago. I'm like, bro, like, are you getting on a 212 stage or are you going to do classic? Like, because you look better than ever right now.
Yeah.
Like you look amazing. And he's like, oh no, I train 3 days a week. I do a little bit of cardio. I have 2 or 3 free meals out a week, and I do my boxing, I think 4 days a week. And they're really busy though with their companies. They have some real estate portfolios that she helps manage, or she manages, and he helps her. And then he has his coaching, and he's got the water, the more water drink,
Yeah.
which is really good. If you haven't tried it, it's really good.
He's not. I probably I have a very big problem to even ship it here to Poland. So
That's probably right.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is the. I not even want to talk about it just because I missed on so many good things that I can just.
You can't even try
ship from
Ross's
the
sauce,
States.
huh?
No, man. It
Oh,
probably cost me more than, I
the
don't know,
sauce.
making it by myself.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
Yeah,
wild.
the
Yeah.
shipping is so expensive. Man, what do you think about the GH in the off season? Do you like it run higher, lower, every day, every 2 days, or something like that?
Yeah. I like to run GH lower in the off season than contest prep. And I like to run it on training days, right after training, preferably. And some people will be like, well, why don't you like to run super high levels of GH in the off season? A couple of reasons. One, financial. Most guys can't afford to run really high doses of growth hormone year round, right? Because our sport's already expensive. Unless they have all these sponsors that are willing to cover all that kind of stuff. Not many guys can spend an extra $700 a month on growth hormone. Secondarily, and this is kind of an experiment that I'm doing because I used to run growth hormone a little bit higher with guys in the off season, but I've been keeping it fairly low between 2 and 4 units. And the reason being is that I think it's contributing to
Thickening the skin, probably you say.
Well, yeah, you know, when the guys today, they're in shape. Don't get me wrong, they're in good condition. The skin's just a little bit thicker, and I think the GH plus the high calories with all the collagen and protein the body could possibly need to repair collagen in the skin, I think that's contributing to just slightly thicker levels of skin, which is blurring out the conditioning just a little bit. So I've been in the last year and a half, I've dropped all my guys' growth hormone down because I want to see if we can kind of like maybe skate through some of these other guys that are already in shape, but look even more in shape and get the benefits of growth hormone from the contest prep. I love running high growth during contests though.
Yeah, high is for you.
So high for me was 16 units of serostim a day.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but then again, it's very pricey, right?
Yeah.
So, but you know, I would say anything north of like 7-8 units is fairly high, especially if it's pharmaceutical grade. If you're using, you know, Serostim or Sizin or Norditropin or one of the other, you know, name brands, you know, 7-8 units a day. Now, keep in mind, I also like to push it up even higher, maybe. Like, let's say we get to like most of the fat off, like most of the body fat is off at 5 or 6 weeks out. I'll play a little game here where I'll bump the GH up, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 more units on the training days. And I'll look and see, does this have a positive effect or does it start to cloud their conditioning a little bit? And there's a lot of ways we can go with this, because there's sometimes what I'll do is I'll have them run their GH. We'll pull it about 10 days or 2 weeks out. And then I will add it back in the night before the show. Okay. With a like a 16 or a 20 unit shot to really get that bursting fullness. Okay. And it won't be, there's not enough time for the body to really start holding water from the GH at that point. So I think we can get a nice aesthetic effect from it as well. That's actually one I learned from John Meadows, because he was a high growth hormone user, but then he would take like a bottle of genotropin, like 36 units right before bed, right before a show. Because for him, you know, he had to make the 212 as a pro. He looked great at like 222, 220. So he would suffer to make that weight. He was already fat-free at 225. He'd suffer to make that weight. And then he'd throw in the growth hormone the night before, right after he made weight. And his body would, you know, jump, it'd come back to life, and it'd be like, you know, he'd compete at like 216, 217 on stage. So there's some manipulations we can do with growth hormone for the aesthetics and the filling out.
Yeah, I would really like to come back to this GH theory, before the night of the competition, when we gonna talk about the comp prep, maybe in the future, because this is something that is totally new for me. I never heard about it, and it's very interesting, very scary, but interested. And
well,
I assuming
scary in
that
a
you are not
sense that
using any. Sorry that I interrupt you. I assuming that you are not using any diuretics with it, just because John hates the diuretics.
it depends. When I use diuretics, it's usually, and you can, and I ask any of my clients that ever listen to this to prove to put a text message saying that I'm wrong, but we will use at most 12.5 milligrams of a diazide. If it's a 2-day show, we might do 25 total, but I use very, very little hydrochlorothiazide. You know, everyone says that, and
no,
but then you find out.
I just laughing just because you are a friend with Dom, and me and Dom use Dom called me just to instruct me how to cut the diazide in a small little pieces, and I took like a 1/6 of a tablet.
That's kind of how
so
I am.
Small that I am to this day not even sure if I swallowed it.
Yeah. you might have dropped it before you put it in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the days of people using, 75 to 100 milligrams of hydrochlorothiazide and Dimidex and Lasix and all, I think we know better now. I just think we know better. And we hear stories of like all these quote unquote top coaches doing this with their top guys. And honestly, my opinion is that their guys looked so good despite what they did, not because of what they did, if you get what I'm saying. Like maybe they would have actually looked even better if you didn't slam them with 6 different diuretics, starting 4 days out. I that's just how I feel about it. And John was the one definitely turned me on to that line of thinking.
Yeah, definitely. And what about the insulin? Well, we spoke about the GH, so some guys like to use only like a short-acting insulin, and some guys are using Lantus and stuff like, I don't know, 12 hours insulin, 24 hours insulin, and stuff like that. Do you like to use insulin at all? And if so, what kind of insulin?
Insulin's my favorite drug, my man. Insulin and growth hormone. But
my also, but I'm not gonna say it out loud.
But yeah, no, but I like all insulin. I prefer your fast insulins, your Humalog, Novolog, Apidra, Fiasp. There's a new one that I just got recently, but yeah, and using them in the way that I mentioned, that intra workout window, or like let's say, like we talked about in the off season, let's say we have a day where someone's trying to bring up their legs, and we might be shooting, I don't know, 1,000 grams of carbohydrates that day. Yeah, we're definitely going to be using some insulin to get to move, to shuttle those carbs into the cells more efficiently, and to give the pancreas a little bit of a break. And then also on that note, let's say we got a guy deep in the off season and he's starting to lose that insulin sensitivity, but we don't really want to change the diet. We don't really want to pull back. I'll definitely add in like a Lantus before bed, anywhere between 20 and 40 units, depending on how much we need to correct. And we're really just using that as more of a prophylactic to try to clear their bloodstream, so then they can get up the next day and have their first meal, because it makes no sense to be compounding meals on top of meals when your blood sugar is high, right? Because your blood sugar is telling you if your body is ready for the next meal. There's other times where, let's say someone's eating their first meal and it's a larger meal. We might add just, 2 or 4 units of insulin.
Microdosing,
microdose it like at the end of the meal, because I want the normal pancreatic response, but then I also want to kind of blunt it at a certain point so that we don't lose that insulin sensitivity in terms of, or we don't get insulin cell, beta cell burnout. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways we can use insulin. And I like to stack it intra workout, because I do think there's a lot of synergy when working with GH, right?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, insulin is going to help translocate your IGF-1 receptors, right? And then you get done your training, you take your GH gets your liver to release IGF-1. So now you have a more efficient IGF-1 to IGF-1 receptor contact, and you're going to get more out of mTOR that way.
Yeah. Man, this is like 3 questions that I just add recently, actually, yesterday when I speak with a Dom, but how high you like to keep your athlete estrogen in the off season? Just because
that's a really good question.
Yeah, some guys are like it's like a almost kill the whole aromatase and just stay as dry as bone, but as we know, estrogen is needed for growth. Is some sort of anabolic, and the question is how high. And I know it depends on blood pressure and stuff like that, but what is the like a typical number you like to run?
Yeah, I like it somewhere in the like 60s, 45 to 60, somewhere in there. I don't want to crash estrogen. We need it for heart health, brain health, joint health. You need it for sex drive. You need it for so many different functions that just to try to stay dry in the off season when it doesn't really matter. Now, keep in mind, we don't want to get sloppy. We don't want to, we don't want to be waterlogged, but I'm not going to make decisions that are also going to hurt someone's health because we know that the AIs are contributing to the dyslipidemia way more than than even the PEDs themselves. So yeah, no, I think somewhere in the 60s is a happy medium. Tell you what, actually, I had a guy, we just pulled his labs the other day. He's having his best off season ever, and he's a low dose guy. He's running only 400 tests and 400 masteron, and I think an oral. I can't remember right now off the top of my head, but anyway, and his estrogen came back at 116, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I started asking him like, well, how do you feel? Sex drive? You don't look watery. You look great. Is there do you have any negative side effects that you can think of that we haven't had in the past? And he said, no. And I said, okay, let's not do anything about it then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's always specific or it's always individual. In his case, an estrogen level that's pretty much twice as high as what I like to see. He's fine on it, and we're going to keep him going that way.
Do you really believe that AI are actually what's causing the problem with lipids or crashing the estrogen? Just because some guys are like to use DHT derivatives just to lower the estrogen. Maybe the masteron is not the best one just because it tends to work in like a Nolvadex, but for example, Primobolan can actually lowers your estrogen level. So some guys like to run it very, very high just to not use NI, but in my opinion, it's basically the same.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's the same. I would say, well, actually, say the question again. I'm sorry, I got lost in the question.
Do you think that's AI are causing the problem or lowering the estrogen?
I think it's both, actually. I think on one sense, using the actual AI is causing some dyslipidemia, and then at the same point, driving your estrogen to suboptimal levels is also contributing to that. So I think it's two-pronged. So, and that's why I think with AIs, we want to use as little as possible and into whatever is going to keep you in a good range. And because you want to try to keep, we're changing the hormonal milieu of our body, right? We're pushing it towards androgenicity. We're pushing it towards anabolism, right? So we want to try to maintain the other types of hormones that we can, like estrogen. So I don't think, and I remember actually hearing a podcast with Alex Cole talking about adding estrogen in the off season, and I meant to do a little more research on that, but I don't know why he would want to do that. But I don't think we want to raise our estrogen too high. I don't think we want to drop it down too low. Even during prep until the very last stages. I'll go on record as saying I don't like to drop estrogen until like 2 weeks before.
Okay. And what's the AI that you like to use the most? Probably Aromacin, but
yeah, Aromacin. Sometimes guys can't get it and they can only get a Arimidex, so I'm like whatever. But yeah, usually Aromacin is safer.
Letrozole, it's out of use. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to hear it out loud just because some guys love it just because it's cheap and it's efficient and you don't have to pay so much and use so much, so it's great.
Yeah,
it's shitty. Let's say it.
Yeah, like it's definitely not my first. It's not my first, second, or third choice in terms of estrogen management. Put it that way.
And what about the tamoxifen? This is one that's actually very interesting for me, just because in one hand, it could potentially lowers your IGF-1, but assuming that you're using a lot of GH and stuff like that, it's probably not going to be that a problem. But actually, it could potentially cause some problem with cancers and stuff like that. So, do you even consider to use it, or you're not liking it at all?
No, I definitely use it. I wouldn't say it's like across the board, everyone uses it. I use it more so in the last stages of contest prep, or if and this is again where it comes back with feedback from people, you know, who've had issues related to gynecomastia. They might say, hey, I do really well with 40 mgs of tamoxifen a day. That keeps everything at bay, and then I can use a lot less of an AI. So I take their advice on that, and we incorporate that in. So yeah, but in terms of like the cancer stuff, I'm not too. I I don't know. It's hard to say because
it's not confirmed.
like
it's more like
exactly.
I think it's more like a cherry picking stuff.
Exactly.
Because
That's what I
yeah,
was going to
you
use.
heard about the same about the GW and stuff like that, but everyone knows that
Yeah.
it's bullshit, and you probably have to run a fucking lot, I don't know, 200 mgs or something like that to be really a cost. It's like an aspartame. Yeah, it
Well,
is
yeah.
maybe not the best idea to drink, I don't know, 10 liters of Coca-Cola a day, but you're probably not gonna die from it.
No.
It's
It's one of those things
minor.
where what was I just going to say? It was one of those things where, oh, looking at like cancer studies, and then you look at the rates of cancer in normal people, you're like, well, that's not very different. So
Yeah.
it may be increased 1 or 2%. That 1 or 2% could literally just be the variation in the sample size of the people that they used, or just dumb luck, you know? So yeah, a lot of those studies, like when they do that kind of stuff, you're like, well, how does that compare to the general population that's not doing it, you know?
Yeah, and this is why I don't particularly like to like form my ideas about something based on labs
Mm.
and like a
Based on just research
yeah,
alone.
just research, just because it's you read one paper and you think, oh my god,
Yeah.
I am not supposed to use it, and then you read another and wait a second,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's totally counterproductive. So it's
You,
you actually never know, and the more you read, the less you know.
well, that's a great point. The more you learn, you realize the less you know, and it's hard. The other thing about these studies is it's so hard to figure out
The
who
context.
paid for the study, because if okay, like for instance, trying to think of an example. Like, oh, back in the day when they used to try to convince you and the US government and the food guide pyramid that carbohydrates were just so healthy, and that you eat less protein, eat less fat, carbs are just everything. And I don't know if you've ever seen the US food guide pyramid, but it's like 8 servings of carbs and grains and breads and stuff a day, and then like your protein was like just this tiny amount up here. Well, the grain lobby paid for those studies to show to extrapolate the results that they wanted to show, so that the doctors in their papers would present, oh yeah, carbs are healthy, we need to. It's all about money is what I'm coming at, is
Yeah,
that
of course.
you got to look at who's paying for the study, why they're paying for the study, and go from there.
And the last question for today is what do you think about managing like a blood pressure with you guys? Do you like use something like that, like a thermostatin, or any like a IRB, or anything that's actually not prescribed by a physician, but by I don't want to say by you, but
Yeah.
like more like you suggested.
Yeah, recommendation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm big on telmisartan. I've seen great results with people on it. Um, but then again, I also will say that like if blood pressure is becoming an issue, that's when I start to also look at other modifications in the diet and the lifestyle, in terms of, okay, if you're only walking 5,000 steps a day, let's bump you up to 10,000 steps a day. Let's see what that effect has on your blood pressure. Or maybe we just need to pull your calories for a little while, get it back under check, and then slowly build your diet back up. So yeah, there's a lot of modifications we can make. Telmisartan's absolutely one of them. Other ARBs or compounds, if it goes beyond telmisartan, I will typically ask them to see their doctor, because I would just like a cardiologist opinion in terms of their expertise. And I tell them to, hey, be honest with what you're doing, you know.
This is like,
I think that's important
for me. This is like a first line of like addressing it. Just go see a physician and let's see what he says. Yeah, and most of the time the physician says, "Oh, everything is fine. You're gonna be fine." So then we might add like I don't know, 20 to 30 milligrams of telmisartan a day, and most of the time is enough. If blood pressure is not crazy high.
Yeah, I start out with like 20, and then if we need to go to 40, we go to 40, and then some cases we do 80. The cool thing about telmisartan is that there really isn't many negative side effects, and there's also other positive side effects, with
like
improving blood sugar,
stuff like that.
Yeah. So I do think I'm waiting for a study to come out to say that, oh, it's bad, it's going to kill you, it's going to cause cancer, but we haven't seen it yet. It seems to be a very positive drug, especially for bodybuilders.
Yeah. And do you stack GW with telmisartan or not?
Yeah, actually I do. Okay. I have no problem with that.
Because I ask, because they are basically working in the same pathways when it comes to the PPIR like a receptor. So yeah. So it's this is why my question, just because I've always wondered if I should stack it together or maybe not.
I mean, I definitely, I don't need to use telmisartan, but I do use GW myself. And then I've got some clients where we have doing them both, and I've got some clients that we're using one or the other. So there's it all, you know, it's all based off, you know, how bad is the blood pressure, how much, you know, support do we need to give it, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, Andrew, like I say, we talk about it's almost 2 hours right now, and we just finished the off season, so we probably not have another 2 hours, I believe. So we're probably gonna finish here. So I wanted to thank you so much for today. I know that I basically hit you with the message that you come to my podcast like I don't know, like a year ago or 8 months ago, something like that.
Was it that long ago? I might have not even.
But you were busy, and you actually are not coming to the podcast in that time frame or something like that. So I patiently wait, and I just hope that me waiting another, I don't know, 6 to 8 months maybe gonna ends with you coming back, and we're gonna speak about the rest of my the questions of my list. So thank you for today, and I wish you to have the best day, just because it's probably like a 10, 11.
It's like 10:45.
Yeah, so you have the whole day for yourself.
Oh yeah, I've got 30 check-ins, it looks like, right now, waiting for me to get back to
fun.
Oh yeah, and I already got through 10 or 12 before I got on with you, but yeah, no, it's been great to talk with you, man, and yeah, I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thank you so much. And if anyone is actually here still with us after the 2 hours of us talking, just remember that every like emails and contacts to the Andrew are in the description box below. And don't forget to subscribe, to share this. I've always talked about the share thing just because I'm from Poland, and this is a big problem when it comes to reaching people outside the Poland. So this is why all podcasts in English have almost zero hits, just because people in Poland are not that great when it comes to the speaking English, and people outside the Poland just cannot find this unless they are gonna write your name, my name, the title of the podcast, and they maybe could find it. So if everyone outside of the Poland are watching this, please share this and help me reach more than 100 people with this gold knowledge that we share today. So thank you again, and see you soon.
Thank you.